Hello and welcome to our talk Scaling Heights, how CEE manages 100 plus legal entities with Odoo Enterprise. I'm Simon and this is Christian. He's going to introduce himself in a moment. And we are here today to give you a quick overview how 100 entities in Odoo can look. First of all, we're going to go a little bit into the challenges. We're going to have a look into the solutions design and the plan. And then we're going to talk about a few specific topics from this project we had to automate, and in the end, Christian will summarize as well with all the results. You will have the chance to sign up here on this QR code. It's going to come later as well. If you want the slides, you can just sign up. We will send you an email with the slides, so you don't have to make so many pictures. And we will just use the email for this, so we're not going to spam you forever. You will get rid of us right away. All right. So, who is CEE?
Well, thanks, Simon, and good afternoon also everyone from my side. I think it was about 2 years ago when we first met at my first Odoo experience here, and 2 years later, that was the first time I got in touch with Odoo, and now 2 years later we have a big project together. We're still in the middle of introducing a fairly complex but promising project. And by way of introduction, so I'm Christian, I'm a Chief Operating Officer at CEE Group. And CEE Group is an international asset manager with a focus on solar and wind assets across Europe. So our core business is to set up fund structures for institutional investors. And through those fund structures we acquire and also develop ourselves solar and wind assets across Europe. And given this corporate structure, we have a fairly complex and also large company portfolio. So, because every single solar and wind park is a legal entity of itself, we have quite a number of companies that we have to manage. In total, it's around 120 SPV companies for the solar and wind assets, plus a number of holding, sub-holding companies, fund companies, and also the operational active companies that we manage ourselves. And so it's 150 projects overall. So if you want to go to the next slide, that was also one of the main drivers for us to, in the end, that we came to the conclusion we need an ERP system, because when the assets grew organically, it was still manageable fairly easily, because solar and wind assets, they don't write many invoices. It's only one invoice that we receive from the grid operator. But when the number got higher and higher, we came to this point where we said, now we need an ERP system and have to integrate all this information in one spot. And that's when we went and have a look for different ERP solutions, and in the end decided for Odoo. The reasons for that are listed here. So first of all, implementation cost and implementation speed was something that we considered. In hindsight, to be very honest with you, that's one of the important, points that didn't pan out in the way that we saw it. I think Odoo can be very quick and very fast if you set up the standard system. If you have many customizations and many modules that have to be created for you, and a complex structure, it can also be quite long in the implementation process. The second point was the pricing model, which is something that is beneficial for us with the many companies that we manage. Because Odoo has a per user license model and not a per client or per company model. So if we scale up and increase the number of companies, it's still feasible for us. And then for us, the company integration was very important, so that we can manage all the 150 companies seamlessly, so that we can, in one list of all the invoices, for example, have the list for all the companies, and not having to switch between every mandate every time you want to work on a different invoice, for example. And then the last point, and then I'm finished with the introduction, is the flexibility that Odoo brings. That is something that really paid out for us very much. The ability to integrate our modules and also connect AI to the tool is very important and worked out well for us.
Thank you so much. All right, so let's have a quick look at what did we actually implement. As you already hear, it's basically about asset management. All the companies, they have a thing in common: they produce electricity, and basically there's only one customer for the electricity. It's the grid provider. So it's fairly straightforward in the sense of Odoo apps. We did obviously the accounting part, which is extremely critical for the operations. We have CRM, we have sales, we have the projects app and the documents app. And then we used mainly 3 marketplace app. One is the dynamic approval app. To be honest, it's the approval app we use the most. We probably have it with over 30, 40 customers. The multi-company select, it's just a funny search bar for your multi-company and to be able to save this. So if you have 100 companies, you don't want to wake up every morning selecting companies, right? And user roles by company, so that's basically an extension of the standard Odoo access right management, that usually one user has companies and rights, right? But the same user has the same access right on every company he has available, and that's something that obviously in this environment we needed more granularity, so we got this user roles by company module as well. We did a couple of customizations and integrations here for different use cases. As already said, there's a fair amount of custom items in this Odoo. The first one is the portfolio app, which is really the overview of all the different assets, the solar parks, and a lot of base data around this. So this is actually quite comprehensive, just to be able, to track all the different solar and wind parks with all the things that are connected to them in one app, to also simplify this part of the management process. We have a fairly large customization in terms of company templates and duplication. As you know, it's fairly cumbersome to set up 120 companies in Odoo. It takes quite some time. So we automated this. I know there's a few solutions out there, but nothing really matched what we were needing at that time. So we actually developed this quite from scratch. Then we have a centralized data management. It's very much related to the portfolio with all the base data. Fourth, we have a bank integration. The main reason here is there's not so many transactions on the bank. There was already a cash management software in place that had all the different banks connected. So instead of having to go, the tokens run out in the EU with the payment providers. So instead of having to reconnect hundreds of bank accounts twice a year, we decided to integrate with the existing cash management solution, so we can just pull all the bank statements from there, not having to go through setting up all the Odoo banks and then re-approving them every time the tokens run out. The fifth point here is a DATEV API integration. DATEV is effectively the German Association of Tax Accountants. You need this to both report to the government and also for some annual closing processes. Unfortunately, most German ERP and finance systems actually cannot fulfill what DATEV does, so the large majority of organizations actually has DATEV under the hood as well. Same in this way, and for CEE, we actually originally developed our DATEV API integration. So instead, as in the Odoo standard, where you have to export the files and upload them, which doesn't work for hundreds of entities and multiple hundreds of journals, you can just do this automatically in the background. And then the last one is also an integration. It's a very, very flexible and customizable OCR provider, BLP Digital, as a Swiss company. I think Odoo is getting to the level where, maybe one day we don't need that anymore, but at the time, Odoo OCR wasn't ready yet for the specific things that we really needed to get from our documents. So we also integrated a third-party app here. So basically there's 3 quite big, quite advanced integrations in here, a couple of customizations to track the right data, and then a little bit of marketplace, just to make things easy that people have solved before. The rest, as always, Odoo standard. What is also really, really important to keep in mind is that in a big project like this, especially when you have to the chance to put your project in phases, it is extremely helpful to put the project in phases. As Christian said, it wasn't as fast as hoped in the beginning. So in the end, we were really happy that at least some of the things were already ready in the first phase, and we didn't have to build everything and release everything at one point. So here we started out with the portfolio management, where an older solution was replaced. We had all the Odoo base system running, and all the users already, not all the users, but a lot of the users already had an Odoo account. They were getting used to the system. This is also very, very helpful for change management here. Secondly, we started with standardizing and automating the entity creation. As we set it up to creating new entities, we obviously also wanted to use it in the beginning, and then we had the ability to set up all these organizations in Odoo. So we had a company for every company, and all the base settings and everything came over for all the different use cases. So there's not like one template, but many, really. And then the third phase, we focused mostly on the integrations. As you know, integrations are quite time consuming to develop, but also to test. And if you have 120 companies and every integration has to run over 120 entities, where there's also sometimes a little bit different use cases, not everything is the same, it's obviously quite some time, and that then became its own phase. And last but not least, after we had all this financial information as well, we could introduce the invoicing, and there's a lot of system improvements still ongoing and still coming in the future. And obviously also the Odoo 19 upgrade one day to be able to use all the fancy new AI stuff we saw this morning. Yeah, in the end, I think changing the workflows and all the systems for this many entities, for this many users, really requires a phased rollout. I would definitely not wanted to do this in one big bang. So I think besides the technical things, it's also very important to keep this component in mind. Most technical ERP challenges are solvable if you throw resources on them, but the change management and the step-by-step stuff is really something you cannot replicate in any other way, and it's probably even more critical than all the technicalities and the features to get that done smoothly. Okay, so now let's have a quick look in the workflow automations a bit more in detail. So as I said, we really wanted to track all the information in regards to the assets. So the assets are in this case always the wind and solar parks. There's a few nuclear power plants of capacity in there. So it's really, these are large parks. There's a lot of things to manage. And obviously you want to track all this data in one place and then later connect it to your finances. So we brought in all the assets of all the different SPVs, the funds, all the related, the units. It is really detailed tracking of everything that exists. This is then obviously also needed later if something is changed and so on, that all of this can be properly tracked. Here we really deeply integrated with Documents, Projects app for all the things that change, and with the Knowledge app, because if you have 120 or so wind and solar parks, you probably have a lot of knowledge in relation to them that you want to keep track of as well. We can do this right in Odoo from the beginning. We did customize here quite a lot of things in regards of activities, both on the automated action layer, but also some more advanced custom stuff. So anytime something happens somewhere, there's always an activity, so users don't get lost in the 120 entities, thousands of records, and they actually get notified, oh, there's something happening here based on a date that I need to look into now. So all of these things can be very easily managed. Then secondly, we centralized all the data management on top of this, also in regards of the companies, all the partners, so suppliers as well, customers as well, and so on. And the asset itself, to really create one unified place where we have all the data together, which then obviously allows for analysis, and then later in the business processes to connect all the business data directly to the rest of the things that we already are tracking in our system. Okay, next. As I said, we automated the company setup. Now what was quite important here is that we have a way that we can also update them. So many approaches I've seen in the Odoo world where you create a lot of companies, you build an Odoo company and you copy it, right? This way you cannot really update it anymore, because you would need to have a base company that's connected to 100 companies. Every time it changes setting, it changes the setting in 100 companies in Odoo. This is very difficult to make reliable, and also maybe sometimes you don't want to update certain things because an SPV has an edge case that you want to be different. So that's why we actually went with a very similar approach to the fiscal localizations, where effectively we are creating a fiscal localization for all the different templates, which then also allows you later on to change this template, and if you want, reload it on a company. The companies itself were then obviously also later created with a script, so we didn't have to manually go in 150 times, but we did a data migration both to create the companies but also to migrate a lot of the old data, which, as you know, is always a bit painful. And for the new companies, you can just go in, create a new company, select the template, and this will then automatically configure all the different things that you need. And there's a few small manual steps that couldn't be automated that are still there, but with 10 new companies a year, I think it's a good balance between automation and manual steps. All right, so let's have a quick look regarding the incoming vendor builds. One of the big challenges here was that we have quite advanced approval workflows because, as you might imagine, in a financial services institution in a way, there's very, very strict governance. So there's quite advanced approval. We also wanted a workflow where we can basically gather all the invoices, but they're not always on the, we don't receive them by company. So we also needed a way that we can sort them into the 130 company buckets. And then there were a few quite complex vendor builds that we get that Odoo OCR back then struggled with a little bit. I have to say, Odoo OCR came a really long way, so maybe it's worth actually trying this again, that we couldn't do originally here. So what we did instead is we get the vendor build goes to the service provider BLP, they have an API, from the API we then bring the vendor builds into the right company, they enter the approval process in Odoo, get accounted for and booked, and then after the booking everything is exported to Datev via the API if our API keys don't get invalidated. So this is basically the process how we then automated it, and the degree of automation I think is then actually very high in the end because you have very limited manual input. You only have the approval steps, which you can't avoid, but they have quite complex rules, and then for handing it over to the government we also have that already solved in these steps. All right, so let's look at the last bigger complex piece. As I said, we have more than 300 bank accounts in the EU. Either every 3 or every 6 months you have to renew your bank token due to the PSD2 regulation. So it would have been extremely cumbersome to get the right people that have access to the right accounts every other month to go into Odoo and redo 30 companies. So as there was already SFirm in place, which is a German cash management tool that pulls all your bank data, also from other banks, it was decided to build an integration. As you might know, all these bit more old school tools, they don't have amazing APIs. So unfortunately it runs over an SFTP server where all the transactions are dropped. And then we import them. It's actually a standard Odoo import format. So we pick them up, we give them to the Odoo importer. There's a few small adjustments, and then the files get imported in Odoo. So we could basically leave this cache management part and all the integrations in the old place and just pull in the data. I think in this case, I think it was a lot easier operationally instead of actually having 300 bank connections on Odoo Live that you have to reset up every other month. This allows us really to have a quite one-click process. We pull the data automatically on a predefined interval, so usually daily because most German banks only publish banking records daily. Later on, we can then quite easily connect them, and we can also then do the outgoing payment run from Odoo to the bank through SFirm by dropping the outgoing payment files on the SFirm server and sending it over from there as the batch payments. As you might know, in most European countries, the batch payments from the Odoo side to the bank side, they don't work automatically, so you always get the file, upload it again, which is also something that the auditors really, really strongly dislike. So as said, this enabled us in the end to both automate the outgoing batch payments, but also import the transactions. All right, so over to you, Christian. What are the results?
Yeah, I would say the preliminary results, because we still got a way to go and we still got many more ideas that we want to do together. So once the fully implementation of the ERP part of the project is done, there's still quite a few ideas. But where are we currently at? So we started with the implementation in January 2024. and the first 4 months we did the replacement of a legacy system that we used for information management for the solar and wind parks. So we had all of our contracts in there, all of our contacts as well, so that we used it as a CRM system. We used it for contractual deadline management, and all of that was replaced within 4 months. So that took until April 2024, and that went live in April 24, and is well established now. So that we have been using since, and that works quite stable and well. And then I think in November 2024 we started with the ERP implementation with all the modules and parts of it that you just mentioned and explained. And that is progressing a bit slower than anticipated, but it's also, as you mentioned, we're doing it, it's like an operation on an open heart. It's like we do it during our regular operations, so our staff have to work in an old legacy system at the same time as in the new system, so this is brings some complexity in itself. So I think for that it's going also fairly well. So at the moment we have 40 of the 150 companies that are already fully have all the invoice handling in Odoo, and we proceed at the moment with around 10 every month to onboard additionally, so that we don't do them all at once, just to be on the safe side with the risk in terms of the implementation. And as I said, there's a number of ideas and new projects that we plan to do once we've finalized that. We look at the technical management side as well, so we do operational maintenance for some of our assets, so we look into doing the field service app maybe of Odoo, and we see plenty more of the core Odoo apps that may fit our requirements going forward, and we're excited to continue on that road.
Thank you so much. All right, so if you have any questions, there's a barcode right here for the pad as well, so you don't have to type it. If you want the slides again, feel free to scan it at the top.
I just want the questions.
I think you're, okay.
I'm the interview.
Okay.
But there is no questions yet.
Okay.
I see some people typing.
Yeah.
What was the most difficult part in implementing multi-company?
Should I go first?
Yeah.
I think when we started, we were really trying to find good practices for these very, very many entity rollouts. And back then there was just not a lot of experience on it. So I'm very happy we took on this ambitious project to actually gain this experience and be able to share it here today. But I think it was really a bit the unknown, like when you ask, oh, hey, can we talk to like 3 customers that implemented 100 plus entities and see how it goes and answer these questions? That wasn't really there. And then I think there's a few things that when you have 4 or 5 entities, Odoo is really well prepared for. But if you have 100, that there's a little bit of feature depth missing in regards, for example, of the access rights per user. So I think this was a big challenge, or handling multiple 100 bank accounts, right? So yeah, to be honest, I'm not mad at Odoo. It's not the classic Odoo case that people started 2 years ago. I think it's coming up more and more now. Yeah, but it was a little bit of feature depth for this very large company setup that was missing.
What would you recommend for someone that will start working with multi-company?
That will start working with multi-company? Yes. Yeah. I think, first of all, I think it's a very good call to work with multi-company and not with multiple Odoos. I think the way Odoo handles this today is very good. And I would definitely recommend going for the multi-company option, because that's a question we get quite a lot. Oh, we have 3 companies, do we get 3 Odoos or 1? Definitely get the 1. Secondly, really have a deep look into finance and cross-relationship from different localizations. We often encounter problems there as well between the different localizations, where you really have to make sure everything is solid. And then lastly, keep in mind it's about the people. It's really change management heavy. The more companies, usually the more people are there. So probably the people side is actually the side that needs the most attention.
Maybe just to add to that, so the multi-company aspect was one of the things that we looked at most when we decided between different ERP solutions. And like, for example, if you look at SAP or also at Datev, for example, you really have to always switch between one company to the other, and it's like you're in a totally new software, basically, and it's fairly complex to get an overview that is cross-company, or to have things like cross-company transactions where placing an order in one company creates an invoice in the other company. So that's something that we thought Odoo was very strong.
We don't have any more questions.
Okay.
Perfect. We also don't have any more time. So.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time. If you have any questions, we're going to be around as well.